Hey, happy Halloween, everybody. John Schumacher here with Health Jams episode number 9, and we're talking all about, boom, mobile marketing, which is basically how to reach people on one of these. And so, obviously, if you're hearing this on audio right now, I'm holding up a cell phone. How to reach people on a cell phone. Today, I'm chatting with Greg Hickman of Mobile Mixed. He's the founder and CEO there. He helps entrepreneurs and small businesses with their mobile marketing. And he's been kind enough today to come on here and share some ideas, some resources, and some content with all of you. So if you can hear me okay, make sure to pop a yes into the chat bar on the side here. I'm flying solo without Michael today. We do have a few guests on here, so if you can hear me okay, go ahead and pop it in there. And let's go ahead and get started in just a second. We're going to be talking 30 minutes, 3 topics, 3 action steps, and we'll have a little bit of Q&A at the end. So let's go ahead and pass the mic over to Greg here. Greg, just share a little bit about yourself before we get started, and then we'll jump into the content.
Sure, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I got started in mobile in 2005, before the iPhone existed, and I was doing a lot of mobile promotions for a lot of professional sports teams like New York Jets, Florida Marlins, as well as some brands like AT&T and Axe, and to see how sports fans engaged with the brand from their phone was really, really amazing. And then the iPhone came out a few years later, and I was super pumped about staying in the mobile space because there's so much opportunity. And over the years have started my own text message marketing company, which later shut down. And then Mobile Mix got started in 2012 while I was working for a media company that represented 300 shopping centers across the country, and kept growing Mobile Mixed, my podcast, my blog, and started offering some consulting services, and then wrote an ebook and have been slowly growing that business, and left my full-time job, which at the time was Cabela's. For anyone that is a hunter, fisher, or a camper, I was the head of mobile for them for all of 2013, and I left my job December of 2013, and have since been continuing to grow Mobile Mixed.
Perfect. So let's talk about what mobile is. I mean, a lot of people maybe don't understand what mobile marketing even means. I know before I watched your talk at the podcast movement, I didn't really understand exactly what that entailed or how you could use it. So can you just kind of define, I guess, what mobile marketing is and some of the umbrella terms that go with it?
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny. I always say that it's even though it's a small word, it's really a big word because it encompasses so many things today. But ultimately, I look at mobile marketing as any way you can engage your audience or customer on a mobile device. And so kind of those bucket terms that you were talking about, I mean, there's a lot of different aspects to mobile. Obviously, one, you have the web, which a lot of us consume from our phone. You have apps, which continue to grow. You have text message marketing, which is called SMS, short message service. You have display advertising. You have email. You have search. There's mobile gaming. All of these things. It's essentially what I say is that anything that you're doing right now in marketing, mobile has in some way, shape, or form impacted it, right? All of these things, we're used to search, we've heard of search, we've heard of pay per click. Well, all of those things are on mobile too, but you just approach them slightly differently, understanding the mobile user. Mobile web, obviously we've been on web. Text message marketing, we've been texting each other. A lot of brands and retailers and businesses now leverage text messaging a lot, to drive sales and engage their customer. Now businesses and brands have their own apps. So really, every aspect of marketing today, as we know it, especially social media, has been impacted by mobile, just because that's the way that we as consumers are consuming content. So it really, I kind of say it's everything because it has just touched all marketing channels.
Right. Yeah. No, it's obviously hugely prevalent. I mean, so you mentioned apps, you mentioned SMS, which is text messaging.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned email and search and gaming. I mean, of all of these, what are the most commonly used ones for like a business, let's say? Are they all, I guess it depends on the business, but
Yeah, it absolutely depends on the business. I mean, really for any business, I would say if you haven't made sure that your website is mobile friendly,
Mhm.
I would start there, just because more and more you'll see your traffic coming from a mobile device, and no matter who's listening, I can guarantee you that most of you have at least 20% of all of your web traffic coming from a mobile device, if not more. I
Mhm.
know some people that have 50%. I had a blog post that went viral the other day, and on that day, 38% of all the traffic was mobile. So uh, that's the place to start. Make sure that home base of yours is mobile optimized for all of the actions that you want or would want any sort of potential customer to take from your site. The second thing I would say is make sure your email looks good on a mobile phone. I think that's one of the most overlooked mobile channels that exists. It's been kind of shown in some studies that 65% of all email is first opened on a mobile device.
Mhm.
So obviously a large number. So anyone out there that's listening that's using email marketing to engage their customers and drive sales, if they're looking at it from a phone and it doesn't look good, the likelihood of them deleting your email and probably deleting it moving forward just it continues to grow. So if you're out there using tools like Constant Contact or MailChimp or Aweber, a lot of them now are offering mobile responsive themes, which will help your email look really, really great. So make sure when you're in those platforms, if you're using one of those tools, that it mentions that the template you're using is mobile responsive, because I know in some of the platforms not all of the templates are now mobile responsive, so you want to look into that. But that's something that we've been used to doing for years, email marketing. So low-hanging fruit right there is something you guys can be doing right now, to focus on engaging those people, just because that's how they're opening your email. Um, then depending on the next tactic, the number three thing, I really kind of branch off at this point and say, okay, well, depending on what kind of business you really have, this is where you might start doing some different things. If you are a brick and mortar based business, so you have, like, maybe it's a service based business, you have appointments, people coming in to your practice or something like that, I would highly recommend using something like text messaging, SMS marketing, because of its immediacy. And it's a very powerful tool, which I'll go into here in a minute. But if you're more of an online based business, I say make sure a lot of your forms and your checkout experience is mobile optimized. A lot of us, if that are building online products and training, we're trying to close sales. So if we send an email out that says, hey, buy my product, and they open it from the phone and they go to a sales page that's not mobile optimized, I've just lost a potential sale right there. So, the commerce platforms that are out there, whether you're using, a new one is Samcart, mobile responsive checkout is one of the nicest ones I've seen. Gumroad is a really great solution for accepting payment both on desktop and mobile. But you got to pay attention to tools like for example, I use Infusionsoft, and the forms that I use on Infusionsoft are not mobile friendly at all. So I have to have forms custom developed, which I'm not doing right now because it's super expensive. So I kind of know that I'm suffering right there in some cases. But you just got to pay attention to what tools you're using and if they're offering mobile friendly capabilities. So
Okay.
kind of those four areas, kind of those last two are depending on which business you have, I might steer you in a different direction. So that's kind of where I would start for sure.
Okay, so I mean, how do you check? I mean, do you literally just have to look on the tool or on the template and say, is it mobile responsive, and it'll say on it or not, or do you have to try it and then check your phone and say, okay, how does that look?
Yeah.
What's the best, most?
Usually most tools now, if they are mentioning that they are, because they know it's important. But I mean, you could always test on your phone. Responsive sites are fairly easy to test by going to any web page on your desktop or laptop. If you take your mouse and grab like the bottom right corner of the browser window, and you kind of drag slowly to make the window more narrow, you'll see if the website's responsive, because the content that adjusts, if it moves around and looks good when it gets very narrow, most likely it's using responsive. A great example of this, just from a common online marketer that you'll be able to see it very easily, is Pat Flynn at smartpassiveincome.com. Mm-hmm. So visit smartpassiveincome.com, get your mouse, drag the bottom right corner inward from right to left, and you'll see how some content actually even disappears as the window is getting more narrow. So that's a good indicator, quick indicator that the site's responsive. You can also, there's a URL, I believe it's iamresponsive.com.
Okay.
You can enter your website, and it'll show you what your website looks like on multiple devices, and you'll quickly be able to know if it doesn't look right by looking at that.
Cool. All right, those are awesome tips. So what's one action step they can take from that talk right there? Let's say that, there were 4 different things you mentioned. Let's say, in general, what's a good step for a business or a small or an entrepreneur to take?
Yeah, I would definitely, if you had to pick one of those things, make sure your website's mobile friendly. So I would check if it is, using iamresponsive.com, and then if it is not, I would purchase a responsive website template. If you're on WordPress, some of these are free. You can get really nice ones for up to $75. If you want to spend money on having it custom developed, you can have a custom theme, done for a few $100s to, $1,500, at the lowest end of custom development. But there's really no excuse to not have a mobile optimized site anymore with how cheap and affordable these themes are. For $35, you can be at least giving mobile users like the bare minimum of experience, right? And most of these themes are really designed very nicely. So find one that you like, buy it, implement it, and that's a really great start. If you only do one thing, that would be it.
Perfect. Yeah. And just real quick before we move on to the next one, I'm just curious to ask if you know this, but do you know what percentage do you think of traffic? Like you said, you had 38% on your blog post that did well. What percentage of traffic do you think will be mobile in 5 years?
People like Morgan Stanley did this study, and they said that by 2015, so in a few months, more people will be accessing the internet from a mobile device than PC. Mm-hmm. Now that's around the world, so that impacts a lot of people. So in the United States, in January of this year, 2014, we did see a point where I forget who did the report, but there was a point where more people were accessing the internet from a phone, smartphone, compared to the computer. So we're already starting to see that shift. So I would guess that in 5 years, most sites will probably be over 50% easy.
Okay. All right. So let's dig into some of the benefits of mobile. Let's go to the second kind of discussion here, and that's on some of the benefits. And let's give a few examples for our listeners today to talk about. Let's just start with, since this is, a healthcare show here. Let's talk about, say, if you're a doctor, a chiropractor, a therapist. I think my hat's going kind of crazy here. It's going to go up and down. If you're one of those guys and you own a physical clinic where you're trying to get foot traffic to the door, what's the best way to use mobile?
Well, so I always say start by mobilizing the things that you're already doing. So what I mean by that is, if you're a physician of some sort, say, and you have a physical practice and you have appointments scheduled, I would guess that there's a fair amount of time people don't show up for their appointments, right? Maybe it's 4 or 5 times a week. Well, there was a study, I wrote about this in a blog post that has the link in it. I'll have to find it for you. That has the link to the exact study. It said that a single physician practice loses more than $100,000 a year just due to no-shows.
Right. I remember you mentioned that.
Yeah, so a lot of businesses now that are appointment based, you'll see like you go to restaurants and things like that where you make a reservation, you're starting to get text messages like, hey, your table's ready, or like things like that. Your dentist, like I got a text message from my dentist not too long ago. Like they're using these things to proactively go out there and remind you of these appointments. Because, I mean, like think about a dentist, for example, like you see a dentist and then what, maybe you go back like 6 months, a year, like half the time and they're like, oh, well, let's schedule your appointment right now. That's basically so they can text message you or send you something in a year to say, hey, don't forget, like you need to come in. Because how many of us go and put it in our calendar right then there? We're like, it's a year away. So they lose a lot of business that way. And they said, multi-practice physicians, then can easily be losing, depending on how many physicians, could be losing up to $1 million a year just on no-shows. So, like, that's a lot of money. I mean, I have a friend who locally owns a tanning salon, and she started using a software to do the reminders, and she reduced her no-show rate by 20%.
Mm-hmm.
So when we did the math of like the average spend, that ended up being like $27,000 a year.
Wow.
And I mean, she is the only full-time person, and she has one part-time person. So that's a significant amount of income that she was losing just from people forgetting and not showing up to their appointment. And she's sitting there, she's still paying rent, she's still paying utilities, like just like a lot of us would have to if we have these physical establishments. So like you already have these customers, right? They're already booking appointments. Mobilize something that you're already doing. Just simply remind them that they have this appointment proactively. I'd say like 2 hours in advance at least, unless people commute longer than 2 hours to come to see you. That would be something that should be very low-hanging fruit that could have a dramatic impact on your business.
Okay. So obviously sending out reminders for appointments and stuff for a physical practice, whatever it is, tanning, medical, whatever, get people there, reduce the amount of people who forget or don't show up. What about pushing out something like a coupon or something like that?
Yeah, those work. So, I mean, I would say before you even go there, to push out a coupon, you've had to have gotten them on a list, right? So you need to have some sort of acquisition method. So you could be doing like a text call to action on any sort of print media. If you use radio, use your social. You can get people onto these mobile alerts, so to speak. You can send out a weekly offer trying to drive people to your establishment. But another big thing, especially with businesses that have local presence, is mobile search. So once you have your website mobile optimized, there's a lot of things that you want to do to make sure your website is optimized for local search, because almost 40% of all search has local intent. And Google has found that people that are searching from their mobile phone, 84% of the time take action within 1 hour. So, like, think about people that might be looking for your service from their phone. The odds are they're probably looking to call you and make an appointment. So if it's hard for them to find you and connect with you and see your hours, to schedule an appointment, find your phone number, find your directions, find your address, like that's putting yourself one step further away, potentially multiple steps further away from having them contact you and then go to the next business, which is probably a competitor, and them going there and you losing that opportunity. So think about and try for yourself, like, what are key terms that someone might use when looking for your business, and basically go onto Google from your phone and use those terms. Back problems, or like back doctor, or chiropractors in name of your city, and see where you show up. And that's going to be a big factor as to new customers coming your way. Now, there's a few things that you want to focus on when you do that, because Google has found that mobile local searchers are looking to take one of only a few actions. They're looking, I kind of alluded to it, they're looking to call you, to potentially make an appointment or ask a question. They're looking for directions, and they're looking for hours. So you want to make sure that those things, when people visit your site from a mobile phone, are above the fold. You want to make sure that they're very easily viewable and available. What you might have noticed is you might have looked for a business locally, and you see all of that information integrated right into Google's results. Well, that's what happens when you set up your business as they have this thing called they always keep changing the name of it. I think it's Google My Business or My Business Google, something like that. Well, make sure your business is listed in that, because then get the hours, get the directions, add photos of what it looks like, because that's why certain companies show up, and you'll see that little button that says, call us, website, directions, because Google knows that most businesses still haven't built a mobile website. But most of their traffic looking for those types of businesses is coming from mobile. So they're doing everything they can to give their users, the searcher, the best possible experience by almost cutting them out of even going to your website, because they know that they're only looking for those 3 to 4 pieces of critical information that if you list your business with Google, you'll have it shown up right there. And they'll be calling you. They'll be coming into your front door because they got directions right from the Google search results. So make sure that your business is listed there. Now, one more point on that. What you're essentially providing them is what's called NAP citations, name, address, phone number. If you're listening and your business has been around for a handful of years, and you've changed your phone number, or you've changed your address, or you've modified your name, there might be citations in some directories, both locally, Google, Yelp, wherever, that might be inconsistent. The more inconsistencies that there are, the more that Google sees you as not as multiple businesses versus you're all the same business. If Google sees you as all the same business because all of those citations are the exact same information, you actually end up getting elevated in Google search results because you look like a more legitimate established business that's been around for all of those years. So there's 2 tools you can use to make sure that those citations are accurate. One is called localcitationfinder.com. I think it's .com. Just Google Local Citation Finder, you'll find it. I think it's like a one-time fee of like $49 or something. Then there's also Moz Local, M-O-Z Local, and I think it's like $49 a year. And they'll go out, they'll crawl the internet, find all of the directories that have your business, and you could basically say, here's my new information, and it'll update all of them. And that'll get you probably 80% of the way. Okay.
Sounds good. Yeah, and local search is a whole long discussion here, but yeah, you definitely want to keep it all consistent, right? You don't want any discrepancies in that. That's one of the biggest mistakes people make, right? So
yeah.
So what about let's briefly touch on mobile for a online presence. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you can build your list, how you can increase your show ups to webinars, things like that.
Yeah, so a lot of these things still apply, right? Outside of the local stuff. I mean, the website stuff, email, all apply. One thing that I've been seeing a lot of success with myself and have implemented for a handful of online marketers like John Lee Dumas, Amy Porterfield, Tim Pages from Lead Pages, is helping them use text messaging to increase their show-up rates, kind of taking that reminder concept and bringing it to their live webinars. Most of these guys run webinars on a weekly basis, which drives a lot of their revenue. Mm-hmm. So, typically the industry says you get about 30 to 40% of all registrants show up.
Yep.
Okay. Now, if you're running like Facebook ads and things like that, sometimes it's a little bit lower because those leads are a little bit colder than, say, if you're just promoting this to your email list. So say you get 30-40% show up, and say of the people that show up, you convert 10% or 20%. If I could increase your show up rates by reminding your audience with a text message 30 minutes before the webinar and then again 15 minutes before the webinar, and we can increase your show up rate by up to 40%, you could be making significantly more money each and every webinar depending on how much your product costs. We're seeing really, really good increase in show up rates, and basically you just implement it so that when people opt in and register for the webinar, you ask them if they would like to receive a text message reminder the day of the webinar. A lot of people that are running webinars, you're promoting them, anywhere from 10 to 7 days out. So that's a long time in like the grand scheme of things. Like I opted in, maybe I didn't add it to my calendar, I forgot. So that message, the text message goes out, and it can be a voice message, which is also really cool. 30 minutes before and 15 minutes before, reminding people of where they need to go, that it's still happening, and that you're looking forward to seeing them there. And we've seen a lot of success driving more people to the actual webinars live.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So, okay, well, give a brief action step for the physical business and the online business. Like, what's one thing that each of those could do to get started in the right direction?
Yeah. So, physical business, I would say definitely use one of those tools, Local Citation Finder or Moz Local, and make sure that spend the $49 or whatever it is to make sure that your citations are consistent across, all directories. Okay. That would be the first one. And then for online people, not everyone's going to be running a webinar, but I would challenge you to think of ways that you can connect with your audience using text messaging. It's way more immediate than email. So depending on what types of communications you have, like say you're like a physical therapist and you're building your own email list online, like you could send out the stretch of the day or something, via text message, and it's like a link to a video on YouTube that's a 30-second video. You could do that. You could do it of the week. You could do recipes, depending on what that is. So think about ways that you can really start helping someone, like your customer's life, by getting through all that clutter and giving them that workout of the week or the recipe of the day or what have you. I mean, there's a lot of healthcare companies that are now people that are trying to stop smoking, like they get like text reminders, like motivational text reminders, like each and every day, or reminders to take your pills, like those things exist because it works, right? People forget. I have medication that I have to take, and I was like, my back kind of hurts, and I forgot that I took it. I forgot that I didn't take it. So if I had gotten a text reminder, I would have been more inclined to actually go and be like, oh yeah, that's right, I didn't take it. I need to take it right now. So think about that as a communication channel that can add value to your customer's life.
Gotcha. Cool. So you've already dropped a lot of great resources, but for this third part, let's talk a little bit, and we'll wrap before we wrap things up, about some of your favorite resources. Maybe give us 3 or so, and then tell us. I mean, obviously, this is all great. I think it makes sense. But what services do you use? Because you need a separate service for the text message lists and stuff. And I know one that you'll probably say. But why don't you tell us your favorite service, and then give us 2 or 3 other really neat resources you can use around mobile marketing.
Yeah. So one that you guys are probably familiar with is lead pages. For capturing leads, they are mostly now, all of their templates, mobile responsive. So if you're capturing email addresses, things like that, sales pages, it's a very quick and easy way to create mobile optimized friendly pages. Another one is Gumroad. I'll use Gumroad because they, again, like if you're doing payments, and you're trying to accept like maybe a coaching program if you're online, or you're selling an ebook, you can use Gumroad. They have really sexy checkout pages, and they're all mobile friendly, very mobile friendly, and it connects right to your your bank account. So they'll do every other week they do a direct deposit, as you know, if you've been generating revenue. And then lastly, for the text messaging, I would recommend Call Loop. There's two I actually recommend: Call Loop and Tatango.
How do you spell
Call
the
Loop,
last one?
Tatango is Tatango.
T-A.
Tango.
Okay.
So Tatango is more cost effective if you're just doing bulk text messaging. You know, hey, 500 people on my list, I have this coupon like we talked about earlier. Call Loop is good if you want to have that two-way engagement where you're capturing that email. So like, for example, like you text in, it's like, hey, thanks for texting in, reply with your email address to get my newsletter. Call Loop is starting to integrate with a lot of the email software providers out there, specifically Infusionsoft, which is why I love them, because I use Infusionsoft. And it can trigger any sort of automated sequence. They also do voice messages. So I like that because as a podcaster, when I do webinars, people are used to hearing my voice. So to have the phone ring 30 minutes before the webinar and someone hears me saying, hey, it's Greg from mobilemix.com. You know, we're getting ready to get started here in 30 minutes. Be sure to visit mobilemix.com/live for the webinar, and we'll see you there. Like, there's kind of that connection between, you know, them listening to me every week in their earbuds to now getting a phone call from me. So I like that aspect. Tatango doesn't offer that. They're both very affordable. So depending on your needs, I would say look at those two. Okay. And kind of to overlay that one, I would say I have a training coming called Convert from Anywhere.
Yeah.
Which is at convertfromanywhere.com, which all of the things that I just talked about, all the text messaging, how to capture email addresses from text, how to schedule, send messages, you know, using these tools that I just mentioned. I have a step-by-step training that's coming out on how you can do all of these things for your own business, and I'm launching looking like the end of the first week of November to the first part of the second week of November.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I'll say November 15th. It'll be out there by November 15th.
Perfect. And I just popped that link into the chat bar, guys. So if you guys want to check it out, get on Greg's notification list so that you can hear more about it when it comes out. I know I signed up for it. I think it's a really neat idea. So awesome, Greg. Thank you so much for name dropping and being so specific about what people can do to get started with the mobile arena. So at this point, let's take a couple questions that came in. Let's see. Question for Greg: what do you think of the use of mobile-based surveys for customer project feedback and list building?
I like that. I've seen like Starbucks do that actually. Starbucks has a really big mobile database that they message pretty frequently, especially during the holidays. But yeah, so the thing with that is, again, you have to get people onto your list first. So they need to opt in to receiving these mobile messages. But once they're in there, yeah, every once in a while, throw out a survey. Say, hey, I'm thinking about offering this new service. Reply A, B, or C for the one that you would like the most. You know, like that's totally a great way to capture information. Depending on which, you know, like appointment software you might be using that powers some of these reminders, they might enable you to do that as well from that service. So I would look into that if you're using something like that. Like I believe Mind Body Online is a big one that like gyms and like yoga studios use, and I believe they have that feature where like you can send out a message where people can reply and provide information. A low-cost way to do that is using like someone like Tatango and just using a link from like SurveyMonkey and say, hey, would you mind taking this quick survey? Because SurveyMonkey, they have their survey forms are mobile friendly. So very simple. I would do no more than like 5 to 8 questions if you're really focused on that mobile response, but 100% a great way to get feedback.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's see here. Oh yeah. Okay. Here's a question. What do you think about? Let's It sounds like people are saying, what do you do? Do people tend to get annoyed, or is there a certain frequency for sending
Mhm.
text messages? I know there is, certain, like Tim Page will say every 3 days for an email or something like that is the sweet spot. Is there a sweet spot for mobile?
Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to the reminders, that's a separate story because obviously people booked an appointment, so the reminder would be shortly before. But from like a promotional outbound content delivery perspective, uh, I would say you should not be sending more than 6 messages per month. Now, I say that, but at the same time, if you're doing like the daily recipe or whatever, the thing with SMS is that there's other organizations that sort of regulate it a little bit differently than say email. Um, so the real focus is on, does the consumer know how many messages they're going to be getting when they were opting in? So
Okay.
like around the call to action, like there's some guidelines, which again I teach in this course actually, is like when someone texts in and you respond, like there's specific language disclaimers that should be in there, like max 5 messages a month, if that's how many you're going to be sending. Say you were going to send one a day, you would say max 1 message a day. You know, as long as you're clear with your customer, the subscriber, and there's no question, no doubt that they know how many messages they're going to receive, they're opting in. This is permission based, just like email. They have to opt in for you to do this. So be clear, and you'll be clear.
So it has to be a double opt-in, and it has to have certain language, correct?
So double opt in if they opt in from the web. But if they just text in, that's all that you need. Like text in, and that next response is good to go.
Right. I liked how you talk about on the stage how speakers, and I don't want to get too far off topic. I have another
Yeah.
question here in just a sec, but how speakers can actually do that with their slides. Text blah 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 blah
Mhm.
blah to free to get a guide, and you can actually build your list from the stage. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been using it. It's been working great.
Yeah. Yeah. What percentage of people usually opt in? Do you know?
It depends on the call to action. I have the advantage of like teaching about mobile while doing it, so a lot of people are curious.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you can, as if I would leverage that, be like, hey, like you guys have never done this. This is really cool. You should try it out. Um, I've had, I've had over 50% sometimes, but I would say like 20% is pretty good.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Someone's asking about a product here. Let's see. Are you familiar with Social Mobi Survey?
I am not, unfortunately. I'm sorry.
Just heard of that. I just actually heard of that myself. It looks like a pretty neat way to engage people on a mobile survey. I think it's a new product or service that came
I
out.
will
So
check it out. Social
I don't,
Mobi survey.
Social Mobi Survey. I think is I've heard about that. So I think Michael was actually telling me about that, and he shared some of that, and he actually has the program. So if you want more information, we could send that your way too. But looks pretty cool. So all right, guys. Do we have any other questions before we let Greg go today? Again, if you guys want to learn more about Greg's new course that's coming out, just get on his list. I'm excited to learn more about it and implement that, especially for our webinars. We're going to be doing a lot of webinars and even like joint venture webinars. I don't know too many people that are probably using that, are they? Not
We're
too many.
trying to get them there.
I mean, it's probably not common, right?
um,
Or is it getting there?
it's getting more common. Like a lot of the bigger players are starting to come on board with it, because so much of their business is around making money off of webinars.
Right. Yeah.
So, if you can make an additional $6,000 by getting 20 more people on your webinar, and that only costs you $50 a month, like you're going to do that every single month, So.
Right. No brainer, huh?
Exactly.
All right. Well, I guess that's it for now. Thanks so much, Greg, for coming on today and sharing some knowledge. And we'll have a recording of this out here real soon, and we'll be sharing that. And if you guys are listening to this on iTunes or Stitcher Radio, you can go over to newwavehealthcare.com/health jams. It'll be the one at the top of the page there. I'll just have a recording out here in the next few days. and we'll be sharing it on social and on YouTube and everywhere else. So, I think that's it. Great show. All right, cool.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
All right, guys. We'll see you on the next one then.